Afternoon, Retro Riders. I'm Roadkill, and this is a new series I'm going to be starting. In each episode of which I'm going to be reviewing a different game from past eras. Most most prominently the 16 and 8-bit eras. Super Nintendo, regular Nintendo, Sega Megadrive, Master System, Game Gear. I'm going to try and cover as much as I can. But well, I've got a lot of ideas of games I want to review myself. I want my audience, you guys, to have um, almost as much a say in what goes on in this series as I do. Um, so let me know, in comments and whatnot about whatever any games that you want to hear me talk about, like any games that you don't feel have been reviewed enough or at least well enough. Um, but anyway, the game I want to review at the moment is a game called Comic Zone. It's it's pretty well known today, but back in the day when it was released, it was because it was released in 1995. It was This was near, well, pretty much the end of the Mega Drive's lifespan, and a lot of people who would have played Comic Zone when it came out had already gotten rid of the Mega Drive and bought a PS1, and that was probably why the game failed so badly in its sales at the time. But since then, over the years, people have realised how good the game is, and it's amassed a pretty big cult following. It's pretty popular. It's been ported and re-released countless times. It was re-released on the GBA, the Game Boy Advance, a more sort of watered down version of it. Um, it's been re-released on a bunch of collection discs like the Sega Mega Drive Collection, Sega Mega Drive Ultimate Collection, Sonic Mega Collection Plus, and it was released individually on its own as on the Xbox Live Arcade. But anyway, it's a pretty. At first, it seems like a pretty standard beat 'em up, pretty standard side scroller. It's as the name Comic Zone suggests, it's set within the pages of a comic book, and rather than the screen kind of scrolling along and following the character as you move along through the stage, you progress through each stage, or pages as they're called in this game. You hop along each panel. You hop along across, from panel to panel, um, fighting off different types of bad guys like mutants and monks and other kinds of nasties. Um, and It's not your average beat 'em up. There's a lot of puzzle elements to it. There'll be a few panels where you beat up a few baddies, and then there'll be some sections where you have to use your mind to work out how to get through. There are certain traps that you have to deactivate, and certain doors that you have to open and stuff. And there are always really specific ways that you have to do it, and you have to think outside the box sometimes. You sometimes have to use your pet rat to find hidden items, like maybe there'll be like a hidden cluster of dynamite in the background or something that you can't get to, and you have to use your pet rat to get to it, and then you need that dynamite to blow up, like, I don't know, a big door or an explosive crate or something. um, and the graphics, the graphics are fantastic for the time. Like, you can tell just by looking at it that it was released late within the Mega Drive's lifespan. The the colours are all really bright and vibrant because they brought in actual comic book artists to do the artwork for the game, and it's all really well done. The artwork is absolutely stunning. The colours really stand out. The backgrounds are absolutely beautiful, and the enemy designs aren't bad either. But the problem I have with the enemies is there's not much variety. Apart from the three main bosses and the odd sort of spider-like and bat-like enemies that you can dispatch with a couple of flying kicks, there are only maybe 4 or 5 different types of enemies. There are 2 types of mutant. There's a monk who wields a staff, there's a big cyborg, and there's a woman who uses her long braided hair with a metal hook on the end of it as a whip. And yeah, that's really it for the enemies. Those are all the enemies you encounter throughout the entire game. And so yeah, repeated they're repeated a lot, so it gets repetitive, although the game isn't very long, so um, it doesn't matter all too much. But even still, there could have been a few more different types of enemies in there. But they obviously put a lot of time and effort into the game, and for that reason, it's probably because of that that the game's so short, because that was the #1 complaint that the game had and still has. It's too short. It's split into 6 levels. There are 3 episodes. Each episode consists of 2 pages, and at the end of each episode there's 1 boss. And although it's really short, the game is not easy to get through, and it takes a long time and a lot of practice to get through. I mean, people say the game's too hard, but I can get through the game, pretty easily and within 20 minutes or so without dying a single time. But I only got there through a couple of weeks of practice. For a couple of weeks or so, I just kind of went. I put the game on and just got as far as I could, and I just did that like a couple of times a day, and I did that consistently for 2 or 3 weeks maybe. And by the end of it, I knew how to go through the whole game. Because it's just a big learning curve, a really big learning curve. You need to learn how to kill the enemies quickly before they take too much health, because the health items are pretty scarce in the game. And you have to obviously learn and remember how to get by all the various puzzles and traps that it throws at you. But alongside the graphics, another thing that was really praised really heavily about the game was its music. It was composed by a man called Howard Drossin. You might and you might not know the name, but he's a bit of a big deal when it comes to video game soundtracks. I'm pretty sure he still does it today, actually. I think he composed a soundtrack for 2010's Splatterhouse, which was a remake of another series from the same era as Comix. And yeah, the music that he composed for Comix is just absolutely fantastic. It's worth just sitting down and listening to without even actually playing the game. But yeah, whenever you see a video game and Howard Drossin's name is on it for the music score, you're in for a good time. Definitely, as far as the soundtrack's concerned, anyway. The biggest thing that bugged me was the ending. There was something about the ending that really mystified me. Like, it wraps it all up pretty nicely. Like, it tells you what happens to the villain, and it tells you what happens to the 3 characters: Sketch, Alyssa, and Roadkill, his pet rat. And where it tells you this with a big scrolling wall of text at the end. But then at the end it says, and they all lived happily together until, followed by 3 full stops. And that just makes me wonder, was there going to be a sequel? again, it was wrapped up pretty nicely, but it made me wonder if they had something else in mind for it. If the game had better sales, if it was more successful at the time, there probably would have been. Yeah, maybe, who knows? But unfortunately, at this point, unless one of the developers comes out and says it, we'll never know what the plans were. But it really is a shame that it flopped so badly at the time, because again, it's an absolutely fantastic game. It plays well, it looks good, and it sounds good, and it's a really satisfying challenge when you manage to get through that game, especially for the first time. It's an amazing feeling. And there are two endings for the game as well, which gives it a bit of replay value. And the ending you get is pretty much just determined by how fast you win the final boss fight at the end. But yeah, I'd give this game a 10 out of 10. That's my official Retro Raiders review score for Comix Zone. 10 out of 10. If you haven't played it, then go and play it. Like, don't even put it off. Just go and play it. There's, another thing, before we go though, I want to just give a shout out to my friend Nathan over at Freeman Family Productions. It's another channel, you might know him, you might not. But he launched his channel a few months ago, and he does reviews like I do, and he does a few other things as well, including voice impressions of video game characters and cartoon characters, and he takes requests from his viewers all the time of what voices to do, and he's really good at these voices. Like, he's really accurate with some of them. Some of them are fantastic. But and another thing we're trying to do together is we're trying to launch a gaming channel in which we'll basically just be like showing the footage of games that we play on the screen while giving commentary. But we're having trouble. There's we're not very technical minded, and we don't really have access to that kind of software, like the screen recorder and stuff. We downloaded one called, I think it was Ice Cream Screen Recorder or something, and it worked fine, except when you played back the video footage, you could barely hear anybody's voice over the sounds of the game. And I've tried plugging in my microphone as well, and I've got a pretty high-end-ish one that was recommended pretty much repeatedly as I did research on which microphones should be used for YouTube projects. It's called, I think, a Blue Snowball Ice. But even that doesn't seem to make a difference. It might just be crap software or something, but who knows. But anyway, this is a channel we really want to get off the ground. So if anyone can point us in the direction of any sort of, decent screen recording software, especially if it, doesn't require purchase, we'd really appreciate it. Anyway, as I said before, if there are any other games you want me to review, just let me know. Thanks for watching, guys. Roadkill out.